So here's a scary fact. An average 50-year-old man of today has roughly 80% of the testosterone of an average 50-year-old man of 20 years ago. Same age, but a very different man. And it's not just drastically different hormone levels. In everyday life terms, that translates to lower energy, lower confidence, lower fertility, lower sex drive, less muscle, lower metabolic health, and a greater likelihood of mental health problems like depression. Now that's a pretty big cause for concern. And what most men get wrong when they experience these kinds of problems is they blame getting older. They accept the feelings of lethargy, lack of drive, and fogginess as inevitable, part of the deal after 40. But it's not. It's what I call the hidden testosterone crisis. And the culprits behind this crisis are hiding in plain sight. These culprits are quietly chipping away at your hormones while you put it down to simply getting old or overly stressed. But here's the thing. Once you know what they are, you can actually fix them. And today I'm going to walk you through 5 of the biggest everyday saboteurs that are destroying your testosterone and exactly how to reverse each and every one without drugs, without clinics, and without any expensive intervention. And stick around until the end because the 5th one catches almost every man out. It's become so normalized that most men simply fail to understand its impact. Before I go much further into this, let me share with you who I am. My name is Matt Farr. I'm a health coach and author. I've spent over 2 decades now helping busy professionals and entrepreneurs fix their fatigue, boost energy, and really slow down that midlife decline. My books and my courses have sold over 12,000 copies worldwide. And on this channel, I share some of the same science-backed strategies I share in that book to help you reclaim your energy, drive, and edge. Now, I've coached hundreds of guys through much of what I'm about to cover. And I can tell you the patterns and habits are remarkably consistent, which is actually good news because it means the solutions are too. So let's talk numbers for a moment, because they're genuinely alarming. Well established that from the age of about 30, testosterone levels start to decline by about 1% every year. And that's not the most alarming part though. Since the 1980s, average testosterone has dropped significantly, not across age, but across generations. Meaning the average 40-year-old man in 1980 had vastly superior testosterone levels compared to the average man of 2020. And while some figures say are as high as 1% drop every year since the 1980s, there are a number of problems comparing levels across this kind of time frame. But what is relatively accepted is that about 1 in 3 men over the age of 45 today have significantly lower levels than their predecessors. So is it really any wonder that we now see record levels of infertility, depression, fatigue in males today? Now, the wild part of all of this is that this drop has been hidden. You see, the reference ranges for what is considered normal as of today are much lower than they were decades ago. The bar just keeps dropping, so men are told they're fine when they're clearly not. The same levels that are considered fine today, 20 years ago would have called for an intervention. But you don't need fancy blood tests to understand that. You just have to compare what was considered normal health for the average male a generation ago, in contrast to what we see today, to really gauge this difference. It's just obvious, right? It's commonplace today to see men walking around exhausted and foggy and wondering why they just can't seem to get their act together. And yet their doctor is telling them that their bloods look normal. But this is a serious problem that extends much further than just a number. Low testosterone isn't just about muscle or libido, though those things obviously matter. It's linked to crushing fatigue, brain fog, low motivation, depression. Men with low testosterone have been shown to have a 35% higher risk of dying from any cause in meta-analysis studies. Though it is worth mentioning that this association is not necessarily causal. In fact, it's most likely that the low testosterone and the diseases we see today share many of the same causes. Low testosterone or its causes also happen to drive visceral fat storage, insulin resistance, and metabolic syndrome. And the worst bit is those problems lower testosterone even further. A vicious cycle that feeds itself and is surprisingly easy to get trapped in without realizing what's really happening. It will affect everything from your sleep, your bones, your heart, your confidence, your relationships, literally everything. The European Male Aging Study conducted in the early 2000s followed over 3,000 men, and the findings showed lower testosterone was linked to more depression, more fatigue, worse physical function across the board. You see, this isn't about vanity, it's about vitality and longevity. Now, before you rush off and get something like testosterone replacement therapy or a testosterone jab, hear me out on this. You see, TRT or testosterone drugs should be a last resort, not your first port of call. TRT and jabs can shut down your natural production, at least if it's done in the wrong way and overly aggressively. You see, your body senses the external testosterone coming in, so it stops making its own. Think of it like a thermostat. If someone else is heating the room, your boiler switches off. And once you start on drugs like this, you may need them for life because natural production often doesn't fully recover. And there are real risks to these drugs as well. Thickened blood, potential heart concerns, testicular shrinkage, reduced fertility, a whole bunch of things. Now, I'm not saying TRT is never appropriate, but it shouldn't be your first move. So here's where it gets most interesting. Many men can restore their levels naturally by fixing what's actually causing the drop in the first place. Address root causes first, trial lifestyle changes for 3 to 6 months, and then get proper testing such as total testosterone, free testosterone, and other important hormones like SHBG, LH, and FSH, different types of hormones that influence the testosterone that's produced in the body. Now, if after doing everything I talk about in this video, if symptoms persist or markers don't really move, despite doing everything, then you might want to consider TRT. So let's get to the 5 saboteurs, the ones you need to focus on first. Saboteur number 1, sleep deprivation. So this one's pretty shocking. Just 1 week of 5-hour nights cuts testosterone by 10 to 15%. That's from research that was published in the Journal of American Medical Association. At least that's what one study found in young, healthy men. 1 week, that's literally all it took. And of course, if you're 35 or above, the impact is likely to be much worse than that because you're already dealing with an age-related decline in testosterone on top of that. So here's why this happens. Most of your testosterone is made during deep sleep, which is that slower wave stage of sleep. It's when the body restores itself mostly. It's known as the restorative phase. It's when your body does repair work. Your body follows a circadian rhythm, just like many of your other hormones, and it peaks early in the morning after a proper night's rest. Disrupt that rhythm and you disrupt production. It's as simple as that. But that's not even the worst part. Sleep deprivation also spikes cortisol, your stress hormone, and cortisol directly suppresses testosterone. They work against each other, a bit like a seesaw. One goes up, the other goes down. But it's cortisol that directs the direction of that. So what's the fix for this? Aim for 7 to 9 hours of sleep every night and be consistent. Same bedtime, same wake time, even at weekends, as much as you can manage it. Now, I know that sounds kind of boring, but your hormones really don't care about your social calendar. And if you find that you snore heavily or you wake up exhausted despite having enough of those hours, you want to rule out sleep apnea because it's far more common than most men realize, and it also has a really devastating effect on testosterone level. On top of this, try and avoid screens for 90 minutes before bed, or at the very least, use blue light filters because blue light really destroys melatonin, which is so critical for your deep sleep. Now, I could easily devote the rest of this video to improving sleep, but there's the other saboteurs to address here, But if you want more guidance on sleep, check out the sleep playlist I have on my channel, where I share a load more tips and tricks for improving your sleep. Now, poor sleep is bad enough on its own, but when you combine it with the next saboteur, you've got a real problem, because they feed into each other in ways that most men don't expect. Saboteur number 2, excess body fat. Now, tell me if this sounds familiar. You tell yourself on a not too infrequent basis that the extra weight that you've accumulated in recent years is just a part of getting older. It's normal. Everyone else your age looks like this. But here's the thing. Belly fat isn't just cosmetically annoying. It's also a testosterone killer. Fat tissue contains an enzyme called aromatase. You can think of this as like a conversion factory. But this factory is not really your friend. It turns your male sex hormones, testosterone, into female sex hormones. In this case, estrogen. The more fat you carry, the more this conversion takes place. For every point you increase on BMI, it's been shown to drop about 2% of your testosterone levels. Now, visceral fat is the worst offender. That's the fat that you find around your organs. It's more metabolically active, more inflammatory, more damaging. It releases a number of inflammatory signals like interleukin 6 that directly damage Leydig cells in your testes. Now, those are the cells responsible for making testosterone. Then on top of this, low testosterone also promotes fat storage. And so, of course, that cycle then continues round. And I mean quite literally, you become more round and round as the cycle repeats, round and round. The European male aging study that I mentioned earlier found obesity was the strongest lifestyle predictor of low testosterone, stronger than in anything else that they measured. But here's where it gets interesting. Losing just 5 to 10% of your body weight has been shown to meaningfully increase testosterone levels in overweight men, with some studies showing an increase of about 50 to 100 nanograms per deciliter, which basically translates to as much as 30% increase in testosterone for some men. That's the kind of difference that could really change your life if you're overweight. So think about it for a minute. Just a modest amount of weight loss can bring a significant improvement. You don't need to get shredded. You just need to start moving in the right direction. Now, if you're finding this video helpful so far, then you might want to check out my free guide on raising your testosterone levels. Just comment "raise my T" below and I'll send you the link. So what's the fix for this? Basic, lose body fat is the simple answer here, but the how is not always so simple. There's plenty of advice on my channel that can help with this. Check out my video on how to increase your metabolism after 40 for a good place to start with this. But in addition to that, some simple fat loss steps are also particularly relevant to raising testosterone levels include prioritizing protein intake. You want to be aiming for about 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight. You see, this preserves muscle while supporting fat loss, which is crucial. And incorporating resistance training into your workouts is also vital. Both will support fat loss and both will help to raise testosterone independent of any fat loss you may or may not see. Now, you might be thinking, I'll just train harder and eat less, pursue it, get aggressive. But if the next saboteur is running unchecked, you'll be fighting a losing battle, because this will undermine everything else you're trying to do. Saboteur number 3, chronic stress. Cortisol and testosterone have an inverse relationship. When cortisol goes up, testosterone comes down. Chronic stress keeps cortisol elevated constantly, like a tap that never turns off. Things like work pressure, financial worry, relationship strain, the always on demands of modern life. Your biology simply wasn't designed for this kind of relentless stress. We evolved to handle acute threats, the saber-toothed tiger, the rival tribe, not the slow drip of emails at 11 p.m. and mortgage payments, or that difficult conversation with your spouse that you've been avoiding. So here's what happens mechanically within your body. Cortisol inhibits GnRH release from your hypothalamus. Now, GnRH stands for gonadotropin release hormone. And it's the master signal that tells your body to make testosterone. When you block that signal, production stops. But it gets worse than that because cortisol also competes with testosterone for the receptor sites on many of your cells. So even the testosterone you have starts to work less effectively. So the impact of stress is therefore double. And here's where it gets even worse than that. Chronic cortisol promotes visceral fat storage, which, as I just talked about, also lowers testosterone further. So everything compounds. Research on military personnel under sustained stress showed ongoing testosterone suppression. Studies on overtrained athletes has also shown the same pattern. So this mechanism is undeniable. So what's the fix for this? Identify your primary stressors. This isn't just about doing meditation apps, as helpful as they can be. Sometimes you just need systemic change. This could include job boundaries, relationship conversations, real solutions to real problems. But in addition to that, you want to build recovery into your week. Have rest days from intense exercise, digital detox periods, genuine downtime when you're actually switched off, not just scrolling on the sofa or binge watching Netflix. That's not recovery, that's distraction. Now, other useful ways to help regulate your stress include 10 to 20 minutes of daily meditation, time in nature, meaningful social connection. These aren't soft options. In our modern times of chronic stress, these are basically biological necessities. Chronic stress is no longer a badge of honor, if it ever was. It's actively destroying your hormones, namely testosterone. So we're 3 down so far. There's 2 to go. So let's take stock of what we've covered so far. First, we talked about sleep deprivation, which tanks your testosterone in as little as a week. We talked about excess body fat, which creates a conversion factory, turning all of your testosterone into estrogen. And we covered chronic stress, which keeps cortisol elevated and suppresses testosterone production and basically makes everything else a lot harder. So these 3 saboteurs alone are enough to explain why so many men feel exhausted and flat, even when they're doing everything right. But there are still 2 more saboteurs we haven't covered yet. And the next one is sitting on your plate and something you've probably been doing every single day without even thinking about it. Saboteur number 4, ultra-processed diet. What you eat directly impacts testosterone production. I'm not talking about superfoods or special supplements here. Diets high in ultra-processed foods correlate with lower testosterone. Multiple studies confirm this. For example, in the US, there is this large health survey that includes diet data, blood tests, and physical examinations run by the CDC, and it's called the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. And data from this survey clearly shows that there is an inverse relationship between diet and testosterone. Basically, they found more processed foods means lower testosterone. The mechanism by which this occurs, pretty straightforward once you understand them. You see, there are some common nutritional deficiencies associated to low testosterone. Zinc, vitamin D, magnesium, these are all essential for how your body makes testosterone. And without them, your body simply can't make adequate amounts, regardless of what else you're actually doing. But we also know excess sugar and refined carbohydrates create a problem too. They spike your insulin, and insulin spikes suppress luteinizing hormone, LH, which is the signal that tells your testes to produce testosterone. So constant blood sugar chaos means constant hormonal disruption and lower testosterone. And then there's alcohol, which we know suppresses testosterone as well. It's both toxic to the Leydig cells, which are, remember, those are the cells that produce testosterone in the testes, but it also increases aromatase. Remember, that's the hormone that turns testosterone into estrogen. So it has a double effect. And another interesting point is vitamin D. It acts more like a hormone than a vitamin. In fact, I would consider it to be much more of a hormone than a vitamin. It's directly involved in the process of making testosterone. And studies have even shown that supplementation has been shown to increase testosterone vitamin D deficient men. And zinc is also really important. Just like with vitamin D, supplementing when you're deficient has been shown to increase testosterone. So the message here isn't to jump on the bandwagon of supplementation, but prioritize a good diet, high in whole foods, high in protein, with plenty of eggs, fish, meat, plenty of vegetables, fruits, nuts, olive oil, all those kind of obvious things that we know are good for us. I know that's kind of boring, but the boring stuff is usually what actually works. And of course, it goes without saying, but limit alcohol, no more than a couple of drinks 2 or 3 times a week. Or you can even try eliminating it for 30 days and see what happens. You might even find it makes a significant difference. Eat zinc-rich foods like oysters, red meat, and if you do go down the route of supplementation, don't megadose without first testing which nutrients you are actually deficient in, because excess levels can also create a number of problems as well. If you're finding this useful, I've got many other videos like this coming soon, so hit subscribe if you don't want to miss it. So we now have 4 saboteurs, all interconnected, all feeding into one another. When you fix one, many of the others will get easier. But there's one more, and honestly, this one is the most insidious of them all because it's become so normalized that men don't even realize it's a problem anymore. Saboteur number 5, sedentary behavior. So sitting is crushing your testosterone. And I say that as someone who spends more time sitting than is ideal. I get it, modern life often encourages it. But research is clear, sedentary men have significantly lower levels than active men. This is found consistently, study after study. But here's the thing, not all exercise is equal when it comes to testosterone. Resistance training, lifting weights, acutely boosts testosterone and maintains higher baseline levels in the long term. Compound movements create the strongest response, so those are exercises like things like squats, deadlifts, presses, rows. Basically, these are exercises that employ a lot of big muscle groups and involve heavy loads. And these movements send powerful signals to your body that encourage it to produce more testosterone. And if you're over 40 and want more specific information on the exact exercises you should be focusing on, in my next video, I'll be covering exactly this. So hit subscribe and you'll be notified when that gets released. Now, muscle mass itself is hormonally active. More muscle supports higher testosterone production, and it's a positive feedback loop, the opposite of the vicious cycles we've been talking about. But the crazy part is, these positive effects are not seen across the board with exercise. Very high volume endurance training, for example, that is done without any kind of resistance work can actually lower your testosterone levels, particularly when combined with a calorie deficit or overtraining. Long, slow runs, hours on the bike, cortisol eventually dominates in those situations. Now, I'm not saying don't do cardio here, but if that's all you're doing and you're doing it at high volumes, you're actually working against yourself and probably depleting your testosterone levels. But it's not all about heavy exercise. Even light movements matter. Standing versus sitting, walking throughout the day, it all improves your hormonal profile in ways that add up over time. Small stuff, but it adds up more than most people realize. So how to fix this? A minimum of 2 to 3 resistance sessions per week, focusing on compound lifts. Progress gradually increase the weight or volume over time. This is a key principle in your training. Your body adapts to new challenges, so you need to keep providing. It's what's called progressive overload. And when training, try to keep your sessions under 60 minutes. You'll find that longer sessions actually spike cortisol level, which will then have the opposite effect of the one we're actually looking for. And on top of this, walk daily. Try to get at least 8,000 steps. The more the better. Personally, I aim for about 15,000 a day. And to be honest, I don't always hit that, but it is something I'm working towards. Another good one is doing interval training, adding once or twice into your week, which is basically short, intense bursts of exercise, which also can help create a powerful hormonal stimulus without that chronic cardio stress that I talked about earlier. So nothing I've shared here is really rocket science. The real cheat code after 40 is really about being boring, just being consistent. and doing that again and again, week after week, month after month. That's where the real magic happens. So let's bring this to a close. The bottom line is your testosterone levels isn't just declining because you're getting older, it's being actively sabotaged by modern life. 5 things: sleep, body fat, chronic stress, processed diet, and sedentary behavior. So you want to focus on these 5 first. Give them 3 to 6 months of your attention. You may well find that you address your testosterone level just by doing those things alone. Start by picking one habit from this video today and build from there. And remember to type "raise my T" in the comments for my free guide of raising testosterone naturally. And if you want to check out the sleep playlist or the video on raising your metabolism after 40 that I talked about earlier, click them both here.